Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We're taking a look at one of the more intriguing matchups that you'll see in the Week 2 slate. And I know you got Texas, Alabama. Dill, fire me up for the Huskers going on the road and playing a Coach Prime coach team that this is a really exciting team. And what you saw them do against TCU yesterday afternoon, like I cannot wait to see how this game plays out. I'm going to dive into some key matchups because this is a really interesting, a lot of storylines, right? You have new first year coaches for both programs. That being said, the matchups couldn't be any but more different, right? Colorado, ton of athleticism, ton of playmaking, and then Nebraska, big time physicality. I think that's kind of the identity of both these programs, and you're going to see what wins: physicality, athleticism. Excited to get into it. Now, before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. Over 8,000 subscribers. That's absolutely an incredible number. So appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, especially for this game, need to know the picks in the comment sections. Best part about doing this, talking ball with you guys, talking picks. So appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here. How we feeling with the Huskers going on the road and seeing this Coach Prime team?
I mean, I think if you're a Husker fan, you got to be very happy
100%.
that Coach Prime and that Colorado team looked so good last week or yesterday, I should say, because I think it gives now Nebraska a good chance to kind of hit the reset. Like that first game for the Matt Rhule era, it's so disappointing to lose it in the way they did, where it felt like they were probably the better team, and to lose it kind of like in the way they've lost games in the past. So now you go out, you get a chance, go play Coach Prime and this Colorado team in Colorado. I think you just get a chance to reset the narrative, like no one's going to be thinking about Minnesota anymore if they go perform really well against Colorado.
100%. And because this Colorado team is much better than a lot of people thought, like it does kind of wipe it. If you go beat a Colorado team that was as bad as they were last year, it's like, okay, that's a nice win.
But even if they went and got smoked by TCU, like Vegas was saying, and it like the Minnesota game then takes precedent. I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Now you're looking at a Colorado team that has two legitimate Heisman contenders, possibly with Hunter and Shedeur, in a team that just like they're way better than what almost anyone thought, besides the real like diehard Colorado fans.
That's actually wild. You said like they might have the 1 and 2 Heisman contenders right now. Like what we saw Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter do. Like if you had to ask me who's the Heisman right now, like I'd be taking a serious look at those guys. Really, really impressive what Coach Prime has done. I think a lot of people would say that. Dill, I want to get into the matchup here because again, it's kind of a tale of two cities. Like Colorado probably lack, and Coach Prime's even said it. Like we probably lack a little bit of physicality in the trenches. We're still trying to get that part of our roster kind of situated. But the playmakers, I mean, some of the best in the country. And then on Nebraska's side of it, like, yeah, you might not have the juice at wide receiver, but you have a big offensive line. You play heavy. You have some bruising running backs. Dill, I want to start, excuse me, with this Colorado offense going up against Tony White and this Nebraska defense that I thought was phenomenal against Minnesota. I would like to hear your kind of keys for Colorado on the offensive side of the ball and the keys for Nebraska on the defensive side of the ball.
I think, frankly, for Nebraska to start, I think their defense needs to find some way to turn up the heat on Shedeur Sanders. And that's what I was stunned that TCU never really tried to do. I know they play that 3-3-5 and they play that kind of shell defense, and that's what they've always done. But I feel like once you realize, this Shedeur is going to like cut us up, and maybe they didn't think he would be as dominant as he was.
They didn't figure out after the first 3 quarters. He had 350 going to the fourth.
At some point, you got to start trying to put some pressure on him, because that was the one thing that I think disrupts his game. I mean, you talk like he's very much a pure pocket passer. He wants to sit in there and rip teams apart. I don't think he wants necessarily have to go outside the pocket constantly and deal with the I don't think he wants to run the football, and why would you when you have the arm talent that he does? So I was stunned they couldn't do it. I think that's what Tony White and this defense need to do. They need to find some way to constantly be putting pressure on Shedeur Sanders, because otherwise he's too good. He doesn't make mistakes. He completes pretty much every pass it feels like he throws. And if they don't get after him, I think that's going to.
I really agree. And if I'm a Nebraska fan, that's what I'm excited about, because you said this is something we talked about all offseason, talking about this Tony White defense. 3-3-5, a lot of different looks, a lot of different ways to bring pressure. And you saw against Minnesota bringing a lot of different pressures. And quite frankly, worked out pretty well. I would look for Tony White to heat up Shedeur Sanders as well, because, again, you let Shedeur sit back there and piece you up. I mean, he is one of the more accurate quarterbacks that we see in college football from what you saw against TCU yesterday.
And the big thing is he's not going to make mistakes for you. That's like, to me, it's like that's what TCU and that 3-3-5 shell relies on, is to give you a turnover, throw a pick. Like, he doesn't put the ball in harm's way. He doesn't miss easy throws. Like, he takes what the defense gives him. He's too good. He's too good to let them sit back and take advantage of that. So again, that's what I'm looking for. Like, and we've been talking about this with this Nebraska defense. You have a lot of dynamic athletes, MJ Sherman, Chief Borders, guys who can, again, play that hybrid linebacker role, but really rush the passer. We think, again, on the blitz, that needs to now show up here. Because if not, if they just let this Colorado team kind of piece them up, I think that'd be a long day.
What I would look for if I'm Colorado, and this would probably be like the next key for this matchup with Colorado on the offensive side of the ball going up against this Nebraska defense, is can you get some of your guys in space and test this Nebraska, especially the linebacker group? I mean, you saw a true freshman Dylan Edwards for Colorado. He's one of the fastest players in college football. I love Henrik, love Reimer. That being said, like, for them, the key is, like, you got to be able to tackle in space, which I think they did a really good job of against Minnesota, especially with all the athletes they have on the back end. But you're going to have a lot of dynamic playmakers for Colorado touching the football in space, and they're fast, and they're going to hit the big play if you give them some space. Can Nebraska come up and tackle is going to be a paramount to this matchup, because again,
that's what I'll be looking for, because frankly, you get into the back end of Nebraska, I really like this unit. I think
a really good group.
Is quite a bit better than TCU. So that, to me, is like the hole in this Nebraska, if you want to call it that, or a place where I feel like Colorado can, again, really take advantage. Is I do think Dylan Edwards can certainly be a problem for these linebackers. But I mean, again, like, I don't want to say that to say like Nebraska is necessarily going to shut them out in the secondary. Like, you still got to deal with a very good receiving unit that, again, another unit I probably underestimated a little bit coming in. I mean, these guys are fast, they're athletic, they don't drop footballs. It feels like they're savvy. Like,
that's going to be a good matchup. Nebraska secondary, which I think is one of the better units in the country, going up against the Colorado receiver group, that's probably one of the best units in the country. Dill, one other thing that I'm thinking about when I see this game is, what's the best way to stop a great quarterback like Shedeur Sanders? Don't let him touch the football. And so when you take a look at what Nebraska can do on the offense side of the ball, Coach Prime said, like, we're not quite there in the trenches that where we want to be. And you saw that, like, TCU could run the football. Now, that is not TCU's identity. And I wish they went to it a little bit more and just try to grind this Colorado team down if you're TCU. That being said, Nebraska, like, you know what their identity is, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You have a guy like Gabe Ervin, who is a bear to tackle. I want to see 25-plus carries from him this Saturday. I want to see Jeff Sims probably carry the ball another 15 times. I know it's not necessarily sustainable, but when you look at this matchup, I want them to control the clock, try to kind of keep the football out of Shedeur Sanders' hands. You go back and watch that Nebraska-Minnesota game. Minnesota did a really good job of that in the first half. Jeff Sims touched the ball they had 3 drives in the first half of that game, especially with the new clock rules. If I'm Nebraska looking at kind of keys to this matchup, time of possession and establishing the physicality in the run game on the offensive side of the ball and keeping the ball out of Shedeur Sanders' hands might be the biggest storyline in this game.
Yeah, especially because that's frankly where you saw TCU have success. I mean, TCU, obviously, their offense, they did score a lot of points, so it's not like this Colorado defense like made something that they're one of the best units in the country or anything. But to me, it's like, why now you really are going to see it. I mean, that's what Nebraska wants to do. That's what they should want to do. Jeff Sims, a very heavy running quarterback. I think Gabe Ervin, obviously, he looked really good, really hard to tackle. So you line up those two and you just really try to attack this Nebraska or Colorado team and make it physical in the trenches. I do think there is an ability to possibly wear this unit down because, again, you have mentioned, and Coach Prime's mentioned this, they're still building that depth up through that front 7 and especially defensive line. So to me, though, I do think Nebraska's offensive line needs to come out and play a really good football game. I thought there were moments they played good against Minnesota, but I didn't think it was a full, consistent football game. They can't give negative plays. They can't miss assignments. And that's a question we've kind of been talking with Nebraska this whole time, is when is this talented offensive line going to really start playing at an elite level? This is the game they got to do it because they're going to need to smash mouth football.
Smash mouth football, a little Big Ten West football. That's what we need to see from the Huskers. Dale, I want to ask you to pick here. So in this, I feel like this line's going to move all over the place this week. Like you're going to see just a lot of, I don't even know if it's an overreaction. I don't know if it's an overreaction. This Colorado team might be just like legitimately a very good team. Nebraska coming in as 2.5-point favorites. I think it's how it's going to open. Who do you like in this game here? I have my pick. I'll ask you first.
I think I have a slight lean to Colorado just because I do think that athleticism, especially up through like the slot receiver play in the running backs, where again it will be very much on Heinrich and Reimer and some of those other linebackers to be able to keep up and play really disciplined football. And again, I thought they did play really good against Minnesota after a disappointing year in 22. But that to me, I have some concerns. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to give them a ton. And frankly, if they can just control that middle of that Nebraska defense, because that is the one thing, that is my one big concern is Colorado blocking Hutmaker and Ty Robinson, who are beating up Minnesota pretty good. And I thought Colorado's line, I mean, yeah, Shedeur gets the ball out really quick, but they didn't like stun me by any means. If they can control those two, I think they can be fine, and I think they'll score enough points.
All right, I'm going Nebraska, and I like the idea where it's like, okay, the keys to Nebraska, can't turn the ball over. You can't turn the ball over 4 times, but I like them in their ability to establish this run game, kind of attack Colorado where it's weak. That's kind of where I'm leaning. So I think Nebraska controls the clock, controls the run game, keeps the ball out of Shedeur Sanders' hands. And if you limit those turnovers, I think you can pull it out in the fourth quarter. This is going to be a phenomenal game. Very, very excited for this one. We'll probably talk about it a couple times this week, talking keys of the games. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys, though, for real. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let us know your picks in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.